Hi, I'm Dan from Foundations Zambia, and today we're going to talk about the second principle of restorative agriculture. We talked in our last episode about not tilling the soil, and today we're going to talk about mulch, or in another way of saying it is not burning our fields or our gardens. Well, what is mulch actually? Mulch is any organic material, any plant material which has died or in the process of dying. And that could be grass, it could be leaves, it could be weeds, it could be maize stalks, it could be vegetable scraps. The beauty of it is that it's probably all around you. So I encourage you, where in your gardens or in your fields can you start applying this principle of mulch, of not leaving soil bare, and thus begin the process of bringing our soil back to that state in which God created it, full of life. Now, when we look at mulch sometimes on the ground, sometimes we can think, gosh, this looks messy. It's better just to clear it all up. Let's just have the soil be clean. But actually, I'll tell you something, we're making a mistake if we say that. Mulch is a beautiful gift from our Creator that protects our soil from the sun, that reduces evaporation from our soil, that increases infiltration, whether it's rain or irrigation. Soil that's mulched will allow more rain or water to go into the soil than soil which is not mulched. Mulch also helps us by creating a thick blanket. In fact, we like to call mulch God's blanket because it provides shade. It not only keeps the soil cool and thus encourages all that wonderful life in the soil to come close to the surface and interact with all the roots of our vegetables or our crops. But that shading effect also suppresses weeds. And just think about this, if you were to take a carpet from out of your house and lay it over your lawn, it wouldn't be long until, well, that grass is dead. And the same thing happens when we have a nice thick cover of mulch in all of our fields and in all of our gardens. And lastly, mulch is amazing because it was a living thing. And as an organic material, it breaks down, it decomposes. And as it does that, it adds organic matter to our soil. So when we cover our fields or our gardens with mulch, we will find that year after year, the level of organic matter in our soil, the level of compost increases, which means our soils are healthier, which means our plants will be healthier. So I've just pulled away this mulch and a beetle has just scurried away underground. And I can see ants, of course. I can see all kinds of beetles, and I can even see termites. And you know, termites are feared by farmers, but in reality, termites are wonderful helpers because all they're doing is taking this old, dead, dry mulch, they're eating it and they're depositing it underground as manure. Not only that, but mulch is an amazing protectant of our soil against the power of rain. Rain comes from the sky with such power that if we don't protect our soil, it will quickly transfer that energy to the soil and the soil will start running away, taking with it our water as well, which is why when soil is unmulched, up to 90% of the water actually runs off. So this beautiful mulch has kept our soil protected even though it hasn't rained in over a month. The soil is not hard as a rock. I'm able to dig through it. I'm even able to find moisture just a few centimeters below the soil, which is a testament to God's ways and to the opportunity that we have to bring back life to the soil. So we encourage you, where can you begin? Where can you start to apply this principle of mulch cover to your gardens or to your fields? And thus begin the process of healing your soil, of bringing back life to that soil and vitality to your plants. One way that we demonstrate here at Foundation Zambia the importance of mulch is using this small demonstration that we make with something very simple. We probably all have it around our house. It's the lid of a cobra tin rather. And we fill it with ordinary soil and place it on a plain piece of A4 paper. And this represents a field or a garden without mulch. And this is the exact same thing except we've put some mulch on it, and that represents of course a field or garden with mulch. And one thing that we always say is that mulch helps reduce runoff and erosion because it absorbs the power that's in a raindrop. Remember that a raindrop falls from kilometers up in the sky sometimes, and by the time it gets to the ground it's moving fast, it's got lots of kinetic energy, and it imparts that energy to the first thing that it meets. If that first thing that it meets is soil, it's going to impart that energy to soil like this. However, it could meet mulch instead of soil on its way down from the sky. And this very simple demonstration is showing us clearly, when we look at the papers, the paper in a sense represents the ground or the land around our fields. And the field without mulch, a tremendous amount of soil has been lost because of that kinetic energy. Yet the field with mulch, that mulch absorbed that energy, and as the raindrops hit the mulch, they slowed down tremendously, and the raindrops just then dribble onto the field. And that creates a situation where we don't have runoff, we don't have erosion, and we have deep infiltration, just what we see in the bush. Another way that we demonstrate the power of mulch here at Foundation Zambia is using these things we call runoff trays. They're made out of simple materials. You can make them yourself. A plastic bottle cut in half, filled with ordinary soil. And the same thing over here, same plastic bottle, the same soil. The only difference is here we have placed a beautiful blanket of mulch, what we call God's blanket. We've also placed them at a slight slope to represent the slopes that our fields or gardens are sometimes on. So these represent two fields. The only difference is mulch. So we're going to see what happens when it rains on these fields. Well, after our 30-second storm, you can see that our soil there's the beginning of these runoff lines, these erosion lines. And of course, the water that's come off of our fields, that are filled without mulch, is full of soil. And this represents what actually does happen when it rains on an unmulched field. So, now it's going to rain on our mulched field. So on our mulched field, immediately you can see that the amount of water that's run off is less, and the color of the water is also significantly different. There's almost no soil that has come out of the mulched field because this mulch has done an amazing job of protecting the soil from the impact of the raindrops. I mentioned that here at Foundation Zambia, we love to do research to actually prove what we're teaching. And here I want to prove to you what I've just said about mulch. I'm standing in a small plot of maize and behind it a small plot of soya that for 6 years has never had mulch. Where there's been maize plants falling over or soya trash, we've intentionally removed it. We didn't want there to be any mulch here for 6 years. And then on either side of it, to my left and to my right, we've made sure that there's been good mulch cover, just like we recommend, just like we teach. And over those 6 years, we've noticed a huge difference. One difference is in the actual color of the soil. If I reach over here and grab some of the soil from the plot that's had mulch, the plot that's had mulch for 6 years, the soil is a different color than the plot that hasn't had mulch for 6 years. And these two samples of soil, the only difference between them is the fact that we have used mulch for the past 6 years on this soil. So this is showing us very clearly that over those 6 years, the mulch that we've put there has slowly decomposed, been broken down by that amazing life that's in our soil and become compost and become organic matter, which is great for our plants. And that's the reason why when you come here, and perhaps you can see it now, that the maize in the middle where there's been no mulch is markedly shorter and less healthy than the maize on either side where there's been mulch. Another thing that you can see, if you were here with me, you would take your finger or even a spoon and start digging, and the plot that's had mulch will be noticeably softer than the plot that hasn't had mulch. Again, this is because that mulch has been broken down, become compost, and that compost has changed the structure of the soil, has restored it back to the way God originally created it. Lastly, the fact that this plot hasn't had mulch, or what we call God's blanket, has meant that in years where we've had a dry spell, a few years ago we had a completely dry February, no rain. And if you would have come here then, you would have seen that this maize with no mulch was shriveled. The leaves were curled. It was looking very thirsty and very short. And the maize on either side, if you looked at it, you would not know that it had not rained in the last month or the last week. So this is one way that we can see the amazing power of mulch. So we've talked about the importance and the power of not inverting our soil and of keeping our soil covered with mulch. We've seen it on the field scale with our crops, and it's just as applicable here in our gardens, whether they're at home or on a bigger scale. So this rape here was planted about 2 months ago, and for 6 years we haven't tilled the soil. We've only dug small basins just big enough for the transplants that we plant here. And we've always covered this with mulch. You can see that even though it's been probably a week since we watered, there's still moisture here in the soil. And even if you go outside of the bed where we haven't watered, the soil isn't hard. It hasn't made that kind of a crust that soil makes when it's been plowed, and then left uncovered. So whatever scale you're at, home or farm, these principles work, and these principles will help build your soil. And they produce some pretty amazing vegetables. But I would cook them first, actually, because it's a little, yeah. So we've seen how amazing mulch can be in our fields and in our gardens, how it helps us conserve moisture, suppress weeds, and build fertility. We've also seen it practically demonstrated. But you may still be thinking, how in the world do I get mulch? Where do I find mulch around me? Well, the answer is that it may be closer than you think. Almost any kind of plant matter can be used as mulch, whether it's leaves that have fallen from trees along your street that someone has swept into a pile, or thatching grass that's come off of an ensaka that's being rethatched, or grass clippings from a lawnmower, or weeds that have been pulled from a garden or a field. There are so many things that we can use to cover the soil, that we can use as God's blanket. If we have a big field, it can be daunting to go and collect mulch. It can be daunting to go and try to slash grass from the bush and bring it into our fields, and we agree, it can be daunting. So what we've started to do here at Foundations Zambia is actually grow our own mulch. When we, this year, grow what we call a cover crop, a crop that's planted not because it provides food, not even because it provides a cash crop, although it can sometimes be sold, but because it fixes nitrogen or it restores the soil, it'll often leave us with a lovely mulch after it's dead. And a great example, probably my favorite example of that, is the red sun hemp that's behind me here. We teach and we advocate sun hemp not only as a way to restore soil, but actually as a way for a farmer to grow his or her own mulch in situ the year before it's going to be needed. This jack bean is an example of what we call a living mulch. We planted this with the rains, and it will stay green the entire year. So as a living mulch, how does jack bean help us? Well, one thing it does is it will help to protect the soil, just like mulch would do, by providing shade. Also, this jack bean is a legume, and so right now it's fixing nitrogen from the air and adding it to our soil. And lastly, since this jack bean is green, it will resist any fires coming through. We hope you've enjoyed this episode and learned one way that you can bring life back to your soils. Feel free to leave a comment below or visit us at our website, foundationszambia.org.